Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're looking at an absolutely fascinating region that has literally shaped the cultural and political landscape of the Indian subcontinent for over 2 millennia. We're going to unpack the sweeping history of Odisha. We'll be going all the way from ancient battlefields to some incredible modern educational reforms. It's this epic story of survival, cleverness, and just an unyielding cultural identity. Okay, let's dive into this.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Ancient dynasties and empires. 2. Gangas and the Golden Age. 3. Gajapatis and Jagannath culture. 4. Invasions, Mughals, and Marathas. 5. British rule and uprisings. And finally, 6. The dawn of modern Odisha.
Starting right off with Section 1, Ancient Dynasty. What's really interesting about this early period is how localized powers, like the Nala dynasty, mapped out the early administrative groundwork. But they were really walking in the footsteps of ancient Odisha's ultimate powerhouse, King Kharavela of the Maha-Meghavahana dynasty. We absolutely have to talk about his legendary 13-year rule, which is immortalized in the famous Harigumpha stone inscription. This inscription details a completely dynamic ruler. He wasn't just a military genius expanding his empire through war, though he definitely did that. He was also a massive patron of the arts and a true champion of religious tolerance. It's this exact blend, of martial might and deep cultural appreciation that laid the true bedrock for ancient Odisha.
Moving on to Section 2. Gangas in the Golden Age, the peak of might and architecture.
If there is one specific avatar of this golden age, it's got to be Anantavarman Chodaganga Deva. I mean, this guy had an incredible reign lasting nearly 70 years, from 1076 to 1147. But he wasn't just some military conqueror absorbing rival kingdoms. Actually, his real genius was in strategy and culture. He shifted his capital to Cuttack to centralize his vast empire. And most importantly, he laid the foundation for the famous Puri Jagannath temple. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a building project, it was a masterstroke. It cemented a distinct, unified Odia cultural and religious identity that has literally lasted centuries.
And speaking of temples, this golden age gave birth to a highly refined architectural identity. Our source details 3 distinct styles of Kalinga architecture that emerged. First, you have the Reka style, which is used for the main shrine and is characterized by this really tall, curved spire. Second is the Pitha style, that's the front porch area, known for its descending tiered roof. And finally, the Kakara style, featuring a barrel-vaulted roof, which was most often used for shrines dedicated to goddesses. This unique structural system is what made Odisha's temples visually distinct from anything else you'd see across the Indian subcontinent.
All right, Section 3. Gajapatis and Jagannath culture, faith as the state's anchor.
The story of the Gajapati rulers is intensely dramatic. Take Gajapati Purushotama Deva, for example. He wasn't the eldest son, so his claim to the throne sparked a bitter succession war against his brother, Hambira. And get this, Hambira actually brought in the Bahmani Sultanate to help him fight. But Purushotama Deva eventually secured the throne. How? By claiming he had the direct blessing and mandate of Lord Jagannath himself. He defeated his rivals, expanded his territory, and as the legend goes, returned victorious from his Kanchi campaign with Princess Padmavati. At this point, the state and the deity were just completely intertwined.
Now we hit Section 4. Invasions, Mughals and Marathas, the era of shadows.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dramatic shift in geopolitical fortunes. On one hand, you have the Golden Age, aggressive military expansion, massive stone monuments, sprawling borders. But then, the stark contrast of the Shadow Era. By the late 16th century, the state was forced into a total defensive crouch. Independence was lost, first to Afghan forces and then to the vast Mughal Empire. So the focus shifted entirely from expanding territory to a desperate, brilliant fight to protect and preserve their cultural core.
And speaking of brilliant preservation, the source text recounts what is essentially a 17th century heist story. So the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb ordered the destruction of the Jagannath temple in 1692. The local ruler, Gajapati Divisingha Deva, knew he couldn't win a direct military fight. So what does he do? He fakes compliance. He had parts of the temple superficially damaged so it looked destroyed. Then he closed the main doors and hid the genuine sacred rituals deep inside. Finally, he sent a fake replica idol to the emperor to trick the Mughal forces into thinking the job was done. Just an incredibly high-stakes deception to save their most sacred symbol. No way were they giving that up.
Later, as the Mughal Empire waned, the Marathas moved in. Between 1751 and 1803, the Bonslays of Nagpur controlled the region, and they exacted incredibly heavy taxes, known as chauth. But that odious spirit of resistance? It didn't die out. The text highlights how local kingdoms, particularly the king of Sambopur, repeatedly pushed back. They engaged in fierce, multi-year resistance against these highly capable Maratha armies. They simply refused to submit to heavy taxation without a fight.
Which brings us to Section 5, British Rule and Uprisings, the Spark of Rebellion.
So the crucial point here is that the local uprisings during British rule weren't just random acts of violence. Not at all. They were direct, justified reactions to severe economic exploitation. The source details the Khond tribal rebellion, which was triggered when the British forcibly changed traditional land ownership systems. Basically, this allowed moneylenders from the plains to legally exploit the tribes and just seize their ancestral lands. When the tribes rightly rebelled, the British responded with incredibly harsh suppression tactics, led by guys like Captain McPherson and Brigadier General Dice between 1846 and 1854. But honestly, the resistance only grew stronger.
Finally, Section 6, Dawn of Modern Odisha, from Resistance to Institution Building.
Let's move to Odisha and see how this builds into the modern era. That fierce, independent spirit is still very much there. In 1942, leaders like Surendranath Dwivedi were arrested for running underground resistance during the Quit India movement. But simultaneously, there was this massive push for intellectual independence. Just a year later, in 1943, a bill was passed to establish a dedicated university. And by 1944, Utkal University was officially founded, heavily championed by the Maharaja of Parla-Kamundi. They realized that true resilience wasn't just about fighting on a battlefield. It was about building enduring institutions for the future.
I want to leave you with this final thought. We've traced an incredible journey today, from the ancient battlefields and the 13-year rule of Kharavela to the ingenious deceptions used to protect a culture's soul. How do you think this 2,000-year legacy of resilience shapes the cultural identity you see in the region today? History isn't just something that happened. It's the very foundation we stand on right now. Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.